everybody had a chance to look over the minutes? Any changes? Motion to accept? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Lindsay, for the director update?
Sure.
Budget.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Budget report, 2023 budget.
Budget report. Oh,
Go over your worksheet for us.
Sure.
I know you haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything. I just proposed, more, like an increase in staff pay, which is very important. And what I propose is they go from $12 an hour to $15 an hour tech-wise part-time, $17.50 an hour full-time. And then the big increase that I proposed was to double the vet service, and that includes like spay, neuter, rabies, general medication. I didn't really propose to increase anything else significantly because this was just a different kind of year. A lot of things needed updated when I came in. More money was spent this year than will be spent next year, put it that way. So the rest of it could probably stay the same and be unharmed. Now, I don't know where the city's at with what they're going to propose. Do you know?
We haven't received a proposal for anything more than the 44 so far, so.
All right.
Heather, I think, is the one who emailed me about that.
Okay.
I think the cities had their budget hearings, and there wasn't anything presented to them at budget. And at this time, my understanding, they're just planning on the same 44,000.
Yeah, we just had our budget workshop, so
but I do think there's a possibility that if a presentation was made, that it could possibly be additional funds. But there's not been anything conveyed to the city about a request for additional funds.
There's not been official. I have requested from the mayor and from Mindy to look into a higher budget for the shelter, but I think that we as a board need to make a decision on how we think we should go forward with making the proposals to County Council, Hanover, and the city for funding, because we can help you as a board.
Right, and I'm going to need it for this. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to need it for this. But as far as significant increases, just the medical aspect of it and the shelter wages are what I increased the biggest on here. There's nothing really on the second page that I touched. Just, what do you say the percentage is that the vet cost goes up each year?
I mean, this year with inflation, I have raised some of my prices by like 5%.
Okay.
It's not like I don't do that typically year after year. I try to keep everything pretty stable, but with inflation, that's what I did this year. Okay. I'm not sure that's standard or more.
So,
in other places.
I have an idea in my head about vet services, but it's not part of the budget conversation. It's part of that.
A later conversation.
Yeah, later conversation. But other than that, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just basically the city, $125,000, and Hanover $17,000, and the county increase. What they talked about in the budget meeting is they want the city and the county to match. So that's what will be proposed.
What was Hanover?
Yeah.
That's what's going to be proposed to them?
Yeah.
I'll just let you know. That should have Mindy know that's what's going to
No, that's fine.
So it's going to hit them.
Yeah, that's what was talked about at the budget meeting, is the city and the county coming together to match what they give.
Your budget's based on what population you think running through the shelter next year? How many animals?
About the same as this year, I would assume. I mean, that's all I have to go off of with this shelter. I've only been there less than a year, so I don't.
So you base I understand that we looked at the first 6 months. What did you have totals for the first 6 months when you were considering these different things for dogs and cats?
Well, what I really looked at is the amount spent on vet care so far, and kitten season always varies. There's no way to give you a number on that. Yeah.
Well, the only two areas that I had well, probably 3 areas. I'm not positive that depending on what type of programs and how you're wanting to do those, that the vet service amount
Right.
is high enough.
Yep.
You know, I understand, and I see where you're basing that basically off of what
Yeah.
6 months has been and doubling 6 months and adding a little bit to it, but
Yes.
depending on there. And then also the spay-neuter amount on the certificates being brought up to 10,000. I would assume that is going to be the dollar figures that would pay the difference between the dollars that you collect from an adoption for the spay-neuter and then the actual cost, which many times the adoption fee will cover the spay-neuter and the other things. In some cases, it will not. And if you're going to be doing quite a bit on feral cats, if you're doing, for example, all the animals that run through PetSense, you don't
Yes.
collect anywhere near enough there to cover your spay-neuter expenses. So I wasn't sure how many animals you are figuring covering out of this 10,000.
I didn't base it off a certain number of animals, I just based it off the math of what we've
Right.
spent so far in
Right.
adding
I
some.
get concerned, you know, my recommendation would be both of those need to be a little bit higher, and I wasn't sure what column you put things like leashes and collars and
We don't need those.
Supplies.
those types of supplies.
Yeah,
Because you're
just,
fairly low on cleaning supplies, you must be counting on quite a bit donation-wise there.
well, we've got a lot of donations for that, we barely
Okay.
had to spend anything on
Right.
that so far. But other, like as far as collars and stuff like that, it goes under equipment. But we're so set on that, we'll probably won't need anything like that for the next year.
Okay.
What recommendation do you have, if you could put a number behind it, more into vet service and spay-neuter? Do you have a number?
Without numbers of the number of animals that have came in this year, cats and dogs, and then a breakdown as to how many of them have went to PetSense, how many of them were adopted out without any adoption fees, it's difficult to put that number together. But,
And how do you think would be the best way for us as a board to advocate for these increases? Do you think we need to have some of our board members go before the county, the city, and the town of Hanover to have these discussions during their budget hearings? Because the city's only had budget workshops, we haven't had our hearing yet.
okay. I don't know which way's best. I've not attended those budget hearings in the past. Primarily, it would be the director that makes the request and explains the reasons for it and so forth. And it may be somewhat helpful to have members of the shelter board there, or the director to be able to state that the shelter board has reviewed the budget and feels that it needs to be this amount and so forth.
Okay.
Many times a lot of the work needs to be done behind the scenes ahead of time, as far as talking to individual council members or talking to them on an individual basis and explaining things and answering any questions they have. Sometimes that works much better than trying to answer all the questions the night of the budget hearing.
Yeah, and I'm happy to help. I'm happy to talk to any of those entities. I'm happy to work with you on that. I went before city council, like before we hired Lindsay, and asked for more, and then Ray messaged me and said that there will be more. So,
But would strongly recommend, depending on where you're standing on these various programs that have been put out, of taking a hard look as to where there's enough dollars there. And then the other side of it is, you know, if this, you know, I noticed the biggest part of the pay increase is over on the payroll side overall on personnel. And I don't object to the wages needing to come up from the 12 to 16. I think that's a positive aspect. I do question, though, that if we couldn't reduce some of our overall labor costs by re-implementing the program with the women's prison.
which is later down on the agenda.
That's fine.
And
It's part of the, it would be
It's part
considered
of why we
major,
have-
main
Yeah.
discussion and impact on the budget as
It
well.
definitely will, and it's part of why we have an increase in labor cost is because we don't have those girls, but we also can't rely on them, is the other thing.
But we relied on them very well. Well, I'll wait until we get to it
Okay, that's
on the agenda.
I'd be happy to go with you to the city and Hanover,
Okay.
providing
Yeah.
extra transportation.
When I did this budget worksheet, I sat down with the auditor and she helped me do this, so I trust her work. She's very smart.
Yes, that's great.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Okay, and then
Now you're.
okay.
Now you're something.
All right, this is the easiest way to read it. The reports are in there, but this is just the easiest way to read it. Okay, ACO, number of cats, but this is the month of July. so the number of cats picked up, 6, dogs 3, for a total of 9 in the county. City of Madison, cats 5, dogs 10, for a total of 15. Hanover did not have any. Those were all Good Samaritan drop-offs, or strays that came in from the public. So, Good Samaritan drop-offs for a total of, the total of Good Samaritan drop-offs for the month of July is 22 cats, 7 dogs, total of 29. Owner relinquished 2 cats, no adoption returns, so for a total of 55 altogether. Outcome reports, euthanized 7, all cats, no dogs. Died in care 6, and if you flip this over, it has, one of them had a broken pelvis. We euthanized that one in Carroll County. 1 bottle feeder in a foster home passed away. 2 newborn babies were killed by their mother, and 3 were unknown illnesses at the shelter. 6 upper respiratory, I think that goes along. Oh, 6, yeah, why they euthanized them. Current population at the shelter is 40 cats.
Wait, you skipped. Could have returned to owner.
I did. Return to owner, 4 dogs, 2 cats, for a total of 6. Adoptions were 43, 26, and 17 cats, dogs. Such a rescue. Rescues are full. I mean, it's impossible right now. There's no rescues with anything open at the moment. I've reached out. Waiting lists are a mile long, so that might not happen for a minute. Current population at the shelter is 40 cats and 13 dogs, for a total of 53. In foster, 12. I know you have 2 litters of kittens at the clinic. I count that as fosters. 1 of them is a dog in a foster home. And vet care for the month of July.
2 of the kittens we had to euthanize.
Okay, so that will go on the back here.
Yeah.
Okay. Vet care, Walt's Animal Clinic took in 3 animals. Pet docs 2, North Madison 0, Madison Animal Clinic 37, Carroll County 24.
Are those numbers including the spay and neuter, or just strictly
It's
vet care?
including.
That's mainly the spay and
That's,
neuter.
well, that's mainly what was
What's in there,
vetted,
okay.
yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's anything from spay, neuter, rabies, to any antibiotics that they may need, anything like that.
I guess those kittens that we euthanized would go on next month.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they need to drop from the current population.
Okay.
That's not the calendar, but that's the volunteers.
So I hired, our staffing is going up. I've got 3 new ones. 2 currently have vet tech experience, and they're amazingly smart. 1 is getting ready to start vet tech classes. She's a little younger, so her availability will be only come the end of October. And Jessica's doing a great job with everything she touches, so we're getting there. Yeah, everybody's getting along. I mean, we spend a lot of time together. There's some tension sometimes, yes, but everybody works well together now, and it's great. Makes life easy. These girls are really eager to learn. They're really smart. They have knowledge that I don't. And our calendar of events. We put a hold on pet since right now because Carrie had a family emergency, so we'll pick back up when she comes back to work. And as far as our volunteers, we've had great volunteers. Half of them are sitting in this room. And the Kings, raise your hand, they have organized that entire building from front to back. They have painted, they have scrubbed down lights, they have basically done everything but color code. They've worked with animals. We can't be thankful enough for them. They've done a great job, and we enjoy having them. And we hope they stay. And Paula, helps with taking pictures and videos and gets our local musicians involved in our dogs and our cat room, and that's been a lot of fun to watch. Very amusing and chaotic, but fun. And then Kelly helps me with just about everything, including my sanity. And we've also had some other volunteers come through the shelter, young and older, that have just been amazing help. The Madison Cheerleading Squad came on Sunday and painted the adoption room. That was fun. A lot of teenage girls in one room, but fun.
And one boy.
And one boy, yes, he's a doll baby.
Yes, he is.
Yes. And other than that, that takes care of our staffing and our volunteer. We don't really have a volunteer program right now. I would like to get the DOC back in. I actually called Martha Edley today and left a message. She was out of office, to see what the requirements and stuff are for our staff to get them back in the building. I don't know what they're going to require, what their guard staff is like, what their numbers are like, or anything like that. But I did leave her a message today to give me a call back. So that is all for staffing and calendar events and volunteers. Right now, our calendar of events, we don't have much going on.
I do, I forgot to tell you, there is a group doing a motorcycle swap meet on September 11th, and they have chosen the animal shelter as who they're going to give the donation to from their registration. They would like to have the animal shelter set up a table at that event, and I figured we could do some shifts of our volunteers.
Okay.
We can sell our own t-shirts, we can sell waters if we want, and then we'll sell their t-shirts, and we get a percentage of that back.
Okay.
But they talked to me like on Monday about it, so
Okay.
so that's September 11th.
Okay.
I'm happy to take a shift.
All right, we have soup, stew, chili, and brew coming up too. So we're not going to take animals down there, obviously. That I went to that last year, and there's like,
A lot of people.
you can't even move. But we will have some type of booth down there.
Awesome.
So that is already in the works. That's it for right now.
Project updates.
Okay, the fence, as some of you may not know, the Community Foundation, Bill Barnes, took this to bat, and with these following funds and support, there's a Spirit Fund, which is Allison Carlson Jackson, Dr. John W. Petcher Memorial Endowment, Morgan Family Advice Fund, Wallace Family Fund, and of course Bill Barnes Community Foundation. They came up with a total of $15,300 for the fence, and the fence is ordered and tentatively will be started on, we hope, next Wednesday. Everything's supposed to be in by then, so that is going to be a plus. It'll have 4 runs over on the kind of southeast side, give the dogs some room to stretch. Cameras, I went over the cameras with Lindsay. I've got an RFP out, so everybody will code apples to apples, and we'll get that going as soon as possible. That should be coming shortly, hopefully.
Your turn again. Washer and dryer set.
Oh yes, if we look at this, we sent these out to local businesses for a fundraiser for just bigger things in the shelter, like weatherproofing, a couple kennels for animal control use after hours until we can get there to put them inside, of course. Room for the police station to drop them off until we can get them there inside. Washer and dryers, it just seems like everything goes down at once. Power washer, and then there's just the general donation sponsors, and then the back page is the list of people that have already donated and what they've donated to. The deadline for this was set for the 21st, I do believe, or, oh no, August 15th. So I'll wait a couple more weeks as checks continue to filter in, and then I'll continue to update this. And then what I plan to do is hang a banner on that nice new fencing we have with all of our sponsors' names on it. Oh yes, our medical room was cleaned out, which was the old director's office. It's all painted and washed, and we've got I gotta order a medical table, which I may need your help picking one out, that's adequate for that atmosphere. Cabinet, 2-lock cabinet, that's a DEA requirement, and just getting everything organized and secured in there in locked cabinets. So we are well on our way to have a secure and safe room to do these things in. And we're still split up like we normally, I know you had an idea for a cat room, and so we're still thinking about that.
And you already covered the fundraising.
Yep.
Building maintenance.
So we removed the screen door because it set off the alarm when the doorknob fell out. Yes, twice. The entire interior Adam has painted, including door trims, walls, chalkboard painted, the adoption room, little window thing. Cheerleaders came and helped him with that. The garage door does need repaired per the request of the exterminator. Like where it hits the ground, one side is lower and there's a gap about that much and things are getting in. So we do need to have that looked at. The windows in the dog kennel area do leak when it rains, so there is moisture that gets in there during heavy rains, and I don't want any molding or anything like that going on. We would like to get that fixed.
As a reminder, Bill Barnes said, make your wish list.
Yes.
They can look and find money for those sort of things if we need them.
Right.
Which I know we don't want to put too much money into that building, but we also
Right.
want to make sure
It's-
we're
Yeah.
addressing what
Yes.
absolutely needs
Yeah.
addressed.
I'll look into the garage door repair, and then if you want to, I'll get a quote.
Okay.
Robert, on the fencing, have they gave any considerations as to how they're going to stop? I know there's not the dollars to put a floor in at this time, unless they do gravel, but even if they do gravel, how are you going to stop the dogs from digging out from underneath it? You know, we had problems on our other kennels, and if you can't stop them from digging out underneath, I get concerned of them injuring themselves or strangling themselves, that type of thing.
I was under the impression that these runs are for like the staff to go and play with the
Yeah,
dogs, and
they
they're really
shouldn't be
constantly
unattended.
They'll
supervised
all
in
be
those.
100% attended whenever they're left in the area?
There should be somebody outside at all times
Well, that would
attending
help
the entire
considerably.
area. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a concern for me too. I have a digger that escapes.
Yeah.
But that was my
Yeah, it's
assumption.
not for dogs to be just left unattended in, it's for people to socialize out there with the dogs and play and run. There should be somebody out in the yard area at all times monitoring while they're out there.
Okay, well, that would be very beneficial.
Yeah.
I think it is going to be beneficial, though, to be able to, at some point in time, have it in the position to where you are able to leave dogs
Right.
in, so they have more room to
Mhm.
move and so forth, and you're not wanting to be limited just to when you could have staff in that area with them.
Right.
An easy way to do that is just like how you take care of predator fencing. You just get chicken wire that's about 18 inches and you put it 6 inches up on the fence and 12
Just
inches
angle it
down. And then the grass grows up. You just put garden stakes, the grass grows up under it. You can mow over top of it, but it stops dogs from digging. Because dogs know to dig under something vertical, but they don't know how to dig holes.
Okay.
So if you make it about 12 inches, they won't be able to dig out from under that. They'll try to dig right at the fence.
You turn it towards the inside.
Yeah, so it kind of like the fence line's here,
Mhm.
this is the inside, it kind of scoops down like that.
It's gonna save me and my dogs.
Yeah.
You say
Yeah.
that, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Put it away,
I thought I
Louis.
had it on there.
That's all I have for repair as of right now, but the exterminator was really adamant about making sure that there's no gap in that garage door because that's where the food is stored, and even though it is contained in sealed containers, like all kinds of things can get in there. So that's a big thing. We really want to make sure that's secure. Are you doing this next one or am I?
Is it old business?
The ordinance.
Yeah, that was some of Warren's requests, so I can let you lead that. That was your adoption policy. You had questions about your fees, the reduction of fees, and then owner
Right, I
reclaims,
understand.
which I think is in the ordinance. I didn't have internet to print the ordinance today, so I was frustrated.
Well, the first area, I looked back, we have one set of minutes that were for a work session and that we discussed, and it was at the meeting where we came up with our final changes and so forth on the adoption policy. I had thought we'd actually approved it at that meeting, but we had not. When I went back today, Hannah had sent me a link to the video, and we ran down which meeting, and we haven't actually adopted that policy. It was something we were going to do at the next meeting, and I don't think we had a meeting in May. The next one that I have was probably in June, and it wasn't in those minutes. So, you know, I don't know if that's something we want to consider tonight.
I think where we were at was Sue was gonna make some updates that we
She
had
did, and she
recommended.
sent those out the next day to everyone.
Okay, okay.
And I have a copy of the, you know, the final adoption policy that we presented.
So I have a question about it now. That's gonna throw a curveball in all of this. If this gets adopted, is this, we would recommend this to the commissioners to become the ordinance for adoption policy, or no?
I don't think it would necessarily be an ordinance. I
Okay.
think they need to look at some ways to leave a little more room for
Okay, I think we're on the
adjustment
same
versus
page then.
having to do an ordinance
Yeah,
every
because
single.
then every time we change it, we
But
have to
they
update
need
that
to be
ordinance.
approved by the commissioners or
Okay.
so forth.
Then okay, that was my question, because I was talking through it, and I was like, if we establish a fee, anytime we change any of that, then we're gonna
Yeah.
have to go through the ordinance
Right.
process again.
So, you know, maybe everyone will want to look at that, or maybe we need to get a copy of it sent out. Sue had sent it to everyone the next day after the meeting. I went back to check my email today to be sure that I had the right copy, and that is the copy that she had sent out. So that's, it's not a large issue for me. And then I also wanted to get some understanding on how it is working on the current adoption fees, owner reclaim, and so forth. Because I get concerned that there's times that those have been considerably less than what it's set up an ordinance and so forth. And is that something that commissioners are making that change or approving that change?
They're
or-
approving it, yeah, I called Runland personally, and he approved it, and I got permission from Bobby over here. Just for a short allotted amount of time due to overcrowding, but they're back to normal now.
Okay.
But the adoption fees were the only things that were changed.
Okay. I'll look into that then a little bit. It's not a large issue. It's something that they haven't done as a group of commissioners. You know, they actually can't take individual action, but there should be taking action at a public meeting to make those decisions. And that may be why part of it caused some of the confusion there, but I understand the need to react at times and so forth. So are we back on the owner reclaim? Are we charging a fee for that now?
Yes, we've had a lot of that lately.
And,
A lot.
and do you get a copy of, what do you do to document that the animal's is current on rabies vaccination?
The last one that just came in had a whole folder full of medical documentation and paperwork and everything, so we really require that.
So you run a copy of that to keep on?
Yeah, we should
Keep
run,
on-
yeah, and
okay.
we put it on Pet Point too, like
That'd
rabies
be
tag
great.
number and stuff.
Yes.
And if they don't have it, we set up an appointment for it, and they're required to get their animal there. We do a check, because we don't want to house them, because we don't know when we can
Right.
get them out the door. Then animal control pays them a visit and writes a ticket if they don't make it to their appointment.
Okay. My concerns on it had been, because I'd been in the shelter, and I understand regardless of how tight you're running things, you're gonna have a few things that drop through the cracks, but I'd been out on a Saturday, and there was an owner reclaim that came in, and I followed the process all the way through, and they weren't even asked about rabies vaccination, and the animal didn't have a tag on, and it was a larger unneutered male dog, so there needs, if you're gonna have those in place, the documentation definitely needs to be there, so you can look back and say, yep, here we got a copy of it, here was the tag number, and we called and verified it, and so forth.
And I will say that, because I was just recently in there when little Jack went home. And,
Little Jack.
yes, little Jack.
Little Jack.
And you guys had already been in conversation before he even came to pick it
Yeah,
up.
most
So
of
you
the time
had
they
his
email.
information already
Yeah.
because of that.
Yeah, most of the time they email, or they have the vet's office email it over, and
So sometimes those are handled before they actually
This
come to pick
particular
up
one,
the
they came in
animal.
looking that day to see if their dog was there or not.
Okay, well-
It had gotten out.
Anything, I'm gonna suggest that I hate to do this, but table this again, just so everyone can refresh on this adoption policy, because it has been since what, April, is that what you
It's
said?
been a while.
Yeah,
Yeah.
do you care if we
I have no
table it?
problem with
Okay.
waiting till the next meeting and
Okay.
refresh on it.
And I pulled up that email and I'll pop
You'll
it
send
back up to
everyone
the
else a
top of
copy of it.
everyone's
That's fine.
inbox, so,
Yeah, I watched the video of the meeting, it looked like we'd been fairly thorough on whatever changes, and
yeah.
I didn't see any that Sue had missed in writing it up.
Mhm.
You can have that copy if you want, Bob, I've got it on the computer.
One more thing on old business. I know we've discussed ad nauseum the kill, no kill policy, and we really aren't getting too far. So I had the idea of, since it's going to be the commissioners that make the final decision on which direction they want to go, is letting them make that decision now so we can finalize a plan whichever way they want to go.
Well, isn't everything that we do just a recommendation that we take to the commissioners?
Yeah, but I wouldn't want us put together a whole policy and then they say, well, we didn't want to do that.
That's I want to get to that when we get to shelter policy plan, which Warren asked that we bring that back up to conversation of how in depth do we need to be doing this if it's going to come down to the commissioners.
I know we are going to bring it to the commissioners. I've been in contact with a couple of national organizations, and they gave me a recommendation of someone that would come and talk to either the board or the commissioners about what no-kill really means, and how we can implement it in an open intake shelter, because that's where everything is going.
Could we maybe get that on the commissioners' agenda? To have that conversation?
I'll
Call
see
Sarah.
when they'll be available to do.
Yeah.
something like that.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot. I had something from Sarah.
And
Yeah.
being willing to,
We have a meeting Thursday.
Oh, yeah, it would be.
the important step is going to be being willing to fund at a particular level. And then, a great deal is in the whole humane care side of it and so forth. You have to evaluate your shelter and you have to establish some limits on what your population can be in the shelter. Because when you get into overcrowding situations and animals being there for longer than a couple of weeks, if conditions are not handled correctly, it results in very inhumane care of the animals. So it's a complicated issue to weigh in and so forth.
Yeah, and I think this conversation will be good to have. And
Right, and I agree, and that's what, these people do, is they kind of define a little bit more what it really means, because I think a lot of people have a misconception about what no-kill is, because we can, expect a certain population that is not adoptable, and that's why there's not 100%, that's not what that means.
100%.
And so, you have that leeway, and you always have animals that are not going to be adoptable in the shelter, and you have animals that are going to have too, significant of an injury or illness to be able to be adopted or taken care of properly. And so they kind of go over that type of stuff when they're discussing it, what it really means.
And how you label it can also affect the desire of public to surrender an animal.
Right.
Versus taking on the responsibility they have first to find a home for the animal. If they can bring the animal to the shelter and be assured that their animal is not going to be euthanized, you may have a higher amount of owner surrender than the situation where they knew they needed to go through some steps themselves first.
But I think that depends, because we're not assuring them that, because there's a certain percentage that.
Correct. When the Humane Society was at the shelter, and a lot of them didn't like it, we actually had them sign as part of the surrender sheet. They acknowledged there was a possibility that the animal could be euthanized as such. Not that it would be or anything along those lines, but that it could be.
Yeah.
And sometimes that would give them a little second thoughts and, well, maybe I need to check a little bit more, advertise a little more on Facebook, or do some different things first.
Okay, new business.
Joy, you're up. Yeah. Warren and I had gone back and forth a couple of times on email, and we talked today on the phone, but I wanted to make sure that any questions that you had, because I didn't respond to your second email, because I didn't have time, that were answered. So I wanted to.
Yes, we've covered that.
Okay,
Yes.
so everything is good on that, because there were a couple more questions that were on there that we didn't cover, so I just wanted to make sure that we're good.
Right, we're good.
Okay.
There's areas, a couple things I was going to ask you today was just how they tie in the numbers. When you euthanize an animal at your business, does the animal come back to the shelter for disposal, or is it being disposed of through your business?
We usually take care of it.
You take care of it,
Yeah.
okay. I need that to get some idea on the total number of animals that have died at the shelter or been so forth.
Yeah, it depends, because sometimes we'll send them back up there, but if we know that we're gonna have a pickup or something like that, we'll just keep them at our facility until they come pick them up, because we don't have a very large area to house them
Right.
afterwards, so.
If a dog's hit on the side of the road, does that end up going into the animal shelter? Like,
That's another thing that screws the numbers up when animal control picks
Mhm.
a dead animal. And that would be something you would have to find in their database, because I would not have that in my
do
database.
they keep that in their database, you know?
It's ran as a call.
Okay,
It
okay.
should be, because if the call comes over their radio, that's registered as a
Okay,
call.
okay.
But that's not, I don't have access to the police records. But that is something that also affects our number of pickup from the shelters, because quite a bit comes from cats and dogs being picked up off the side of the road and put in our freezer. Yeah. I know.
I hate
it's
hearing
the only way to
it.
say it,
Yeah, I just hate it.
Yeah.
All right. Public access and staff safety is mine, so I'll go ahead. With this, so the county is secure. You get to go into the county building. You have to go through metal detectors and that sort of stuff. City Hall, anyone can walk in. And we had a group come in and say, we can walk in and do whatever we want in here. And they do it in a bunch of buildings and point out lack of security. And in that day, I called Lindsay and said, hey, I'm just warning you because you are a county building, like, just go ahead and lock the door just in case. She's like, it was really vague. And then, this was a few months ago, so to go forward, there was a time when I was up there and there was a couple that were very irate and the police were there. And really the only thing protecting the staff is them just standing behind that desk. If you've been in there, you've seen it, it's not much protection. But there's no actual protection of the animals in the sense of anyone from the public can just walk in and run past the staff, run past Lindsay. They can get into the cat rooms, they can get into the dog rooms, they can, and Lindsay's in the position of, let me call the cops or let me follow them and hope for the best. And there's sometimes that shelter staff is, like Lindsay's not there and Jessica's there and she's
90 pounds soaking
yes.
wet, bless her heart.
Yes,
Yeah.
she's tiny, so that's a difficult situation. So I really want us to look into the possibility of setting up that front room a little different, where we can create kind of a waiting space like all shelters have, and a barrier, so the staff is behind like a desk or a counter space, and there's a waiting area. That way, if the staff's in the back and someone's not right there to greet someone coming in, they can't just walk around the shelter and they can't go and try and steal a dog or do something, or even contaminate the animals by putting their hands in sick cages or whatever. So I want us to look into, and I drew a picture, and I am not an artist, so it's hideous, anyone can see it if they'd like, of kind of like a shift of either the desk is kind of pathetic, if we could somehow do a countertop. Trev from the city has offered his time volunteering to help build it. I know Adam can help with that as well. But just kind of reconfiguring that front space to create a waiting space and then a safe space with like a half door, so the staff has some sort of barrier. It doesn't 100% protect them,
Right.
but it also kind of slows someone down from just running in there.
Right, and then we can reroute animal control to the side doors.
Yes.
That way they can just take the animal directly into the kennel hallway.
Instead of maybe
Yes.
doing some cross path
That's
with the
something
animals.
we bring, like I showed you about the cat room, we could bring that right on across.
Yeah, that would allow us
So
to
then
do
you
that,
would
yeah.
have a small foyer area for the public to come in, and then
And
the
wait,
person behind
yeah.
the counter can say, how can I help you?
Right,
Yeah.
if they have donations, they can slide them across the counter
Yeah.
into bins, we can put them away.
So I'm not sure if we need to get a quote on that, or if that's something that we can get volunteers to build out, but then maybe Lowe's to donate the material. Lowe's has donated to the shelter before when the grass was all overgrown. They got us some shrubbery up there and everything, so I'm not sure. I'm happy to call Lowe's and see if they want to help donate some materials. But I think it's something that we really need to be proactive about.
Yes, we've actually had a handful of events like that, of people that have either tried to grab us, push past us, making no sense in the way
I
that they
was there
speak.
when Adam had to tell someone, you can't go back there,
Yeah,
and had to stop.
I've had to do it a
He
couple
put
times,
himself-
yeah,
He
Yeah.
put himself in between this person and the door to the dog room, so, and
Yep.
it's, you get all sorts of people in there, you get angry people because their dog has been taken by animal control for neglect, you get all sorts of people, so,
That's something we could do with a stub wall and then glass on top.
yeah.
That way you'd still have good visibility,
Yeah.
but yet you'd have some security.
Super ATV still does that plexiglass shield,
Yeah.
don't they?
And they're dog lovers.
And they're dog lovers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Quite a few, right.
Yep.
They're too far distance-wise for panic buttons or anything.
I don't think so. I think installing some panic buttons would be
Because
You
helpful.
don't see, we have them in the courthouse.
Yeah.
They can
Right.
press a button
And then
and
it
it
rings
alerts
in.
the jail and
Yeah.
they're just minutes away,
Because, yeah,
whereas
can you
I
pick
think
up the
we're-
phone and call
Yeah,
and
it's
somebody's.
hard.
not that far to.
And I think, you know, we're in times where we have to be thinking about these sort of things too,
Yeah,
which is
as long
unfortunate.
as we can keep Sprout from pushing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Under the, I don't know.
He pushes every other button, bless his heart.
So I just wanted to bring that up. I'm happy to reach out to Lowe's. I'm happy, Glass Unlimited also does great work. They drew up a sketch for us,
I
so
can get a quote. from
That would be
them. We're
great.
getting a quote from the courthouse
Okay.
right now, so.
we just got a quote from them as well.
And getting it set up to where it's always been an ongoing battle to have animal control to come in through the sides
It would
versus
be great to have them
through the
come from the
front lobby.
side.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
it's a problem when you bring
Jessica-
animals in through the front lobby.
and
Yeah.
Jessica actually cleared out a space where one of those doors was, and
Mhm.
for animal control to have access, and she cleared out that
Mhm.
space recently. There's been a lot of clean out. The dumpster's full again, so
And anybody who goes in the garage area right now, like, Adam should be on one of those shows where it's like organization skills, you know what I mean? Because, I mean, it's
Just
like
what I do,
everything.
sorry. Everything's labeled off
It's
the
like if
floor,
anybody
nothing's on the
wants
floor.
somebody for hire to organize, he would be your guy.
You can go through those rooms.
Yeah, they can easily
And
get through
right
there
to
with
the
an animal
kennels.
now.
Where you said something about a cat room, I hadn't heard about this.
You know where the cat room is now? My thought was on that hallway to bring that on out and then go across and like move that door to the front of it. So it'd give you, what do we figure?
You could actually move that door in the hallway,
80 square foot.
a sliding door, and just put windows in the front. That way we can
So-
close it all off.
you'll have to be in
From
there
the-
to like
from the
see
front.
it. They had
Yeah.
to show me.
That would
Yeah.
be something
I
I would
can't
need
draw.
you there for anyways, because we
We
still
can
need
show
to
you
keep
what
them
we're
separated
talking
from the
about.
sick ones. We don't just need to go rapid and let them all loose.
Right.
Right.
Like you come in and here's the cat room now.
Yeah.
My thought was we'd do away with this, bring this over and just duplicate it. That would give you about an additional 80
That
square
wall would be
foot.
none.
That would be gone, this would be 4 foot up and then glass all the way around so you
Mm-hmm.
can see in. So then we could incorporate that
The
coming over
desk, yeah.
Yeah. And
for the
that's
staff
behind it right
back here
there.
and then the public would enter right in here and
Yeah.
have like a
And
lobby.
then have this where the door is, to have it where it requires a staff member with a fob or something to get them
You
in.
could put a fob or a card or whatever.
And the medical room also needs that same sort of system.
Mm.
Yeah.
Just
you have to have
roughing
that.
it would be like 80 square more feet, but it would all be open and
I
have
think that would
light.
be great. I don't like walking into the kittens and the
I know.
cages in the front, because it's just asking for spread of disease.
But there's nothing outside you could build on because
Right.
the west end falls off and nothing in it. Cost prohibitive, and I hate to put any money in it more than you have to, but we gotta keep it functional enough to
So
do.
you'll work on a quote from Glass Unlimited on that. I can see if Lowe's might donate some material to build out that desk.
Cool.
Okay, what's
You
next?
got SOPs, which you had say, and then shelter policy plan. And there's a couple things that I felt fit in shelter policy, Warren, that you had requested,
Well,
like record keeping.
right, let me first, I'll start with the record keeping, because I think that's the most important. When you look through any of the veterinary associations with shelters and so forth, one of the key aspects to be able to tell where you are is to be able to have accurate ongoing record keeping on the animals. We shouldn't have any animals that come into the shelter that aren't accounted for, or any that leave that aren't accounted for what happened to them as such. And there's been progress made on the monthly report here, that looks
Yeah,
very
we
good.
meticulously use pet points.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And be able to fill that out. There's so much information it can provide overall for budgeting purposes, and what maximum capacity could be and what you're going to do when you hit those capacities, those types of issues. So if the more of that we can do, there may be year-to-date totals along with it is helpful. So it's very important on that. And then the same thing as we talked earlier, the documentation, if we're requiring proof of rabies vaccination, that it's there, that you can follow up, that it's been taken care of.
And that goes into Pet Point, you said?
Yeah, you can put the
Okay.
rabies tag number in the pet one.
Right. And then the other question is, we still have You know, we started on adoption policy, we got hung up on a euthanasia policy. How is the board wanting to proceed with those policy
And we haven't
issues?
even adopted that, so.
We haven't had the vote on the adoption policy yet. So we're needing to get those wrapped up, and then there's also been would like to have some conversations on this barn cat program or issue.
So Joy sent over that standard operating procedures for shelters. I'm not sure if the board had time to fully review it yet. I personally have not. But I think everyone needs to read through that, and then we can see, because that could be a great starting point.
Yeah.
Rather than us like having these conversations over and over, and then having the individuals that you were speaking about coming and talking to us about no-kill status and.
Yeah, and then I have another person that will just come and talk about like best policies for shelter organizations too.
Yeah.
So I thought that would be good, so that we kind of like have a starting point where, you know, this is what this is best policy, this is national policy, this is what our recommendations are for these national organizations, and they will give us a good starting point to where we go from here and fit it into our shelter. So I think that would be good.
It's a good thing to read through. It's about 40, 50 pages,
Yeah, I've
something
read
like
it,
that. And it's been around for a long time. It's a 2010 edition. There's several others of different organizations that also have other guidelines. There's a very large group from Humane Society and so forth. The thing that is interesting when you read through them, they will provide you guidance with what areas you should be covering in your policy. And they will have some language that you may be able to copy and paste out of it, but it is extremely difficult to find one that says, oh, here's what our policy, what your policy needs to be.
Yeah.
It will list all the various items. And same thing, you can go through and you can probably find 1,000 policies on euthanasia from 1,000 different animal shelters if you dig deep enough. But none of them fit. You know, it's a matter of taking the time and going through as a group what's going to work for our shelter.
My recommendation is we have everyone read through that. It's not like reading.
Yeah.
But I think everyone should read through that. But I do agree. My question though with shelter policy plan is, all we do is we make a recommendation to the commissioners to say, hey, this is the policies we've put forward. So how much do we need to do like a work session and involve the commissioners in that? So, or.
Yeah, because you don't want to spend all the time working and then them just be like, no.
Like, do we need to do a joint
Or
meeting?
go back and do something else.
Maybe?
I think that you can get them practically to a finish point before you would bring the commissioners in on those as such.
And then host a joint meeting?
And, well, I don't know that you need to host a joint meeting. You can email your policies to them and ask for comments. Are there any things or changes and so forth? And I know commissioners have got their hands full meeting-wise and time-wise, but I think they could communicate without it having to be a joint meeting as such. I think for the most part, they're probably, other than where it comes into constraints on budget and so forth, or practicalities, they're going to follow recommendations of the Shelter Advisory
So
Board.
do we want to, all the board members read that packet that Joyce sent us, refresh on this, and then the next board meeting we can converse over email and decide where we want to go forward with policies?
I think the biggest question is how are you going to attack it? I mean, we went it from a direction to where various shelter board members brought in examples of a policy. We did that with the adoption. We started that process with the euthanasia policy as well. Is it something we want to approach that direction? Is it something that, and even before that we started, Lindsay brought in some policies from Switzerland County. And so I don't know how we want to approach that. If it's something that, I think it helps it if we can have some type of framework on the table before, ahead of time.
Well, most of the policies I see going forward are stuff you're already doing. You can just write out what you're already doing, and then we can add or subtract from that.
It's not always different from the start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and look at what you're doing and compare it with, you know, the best practices and say, okay, well, this is right, this is going along with best practices, this is not going along with best practices, so we need to change this policy. So I think that that would be kind of where to start from that. Because that, the Shelter Veterinarians Association has in it like square footage per cat, so like building the new cat area, it would, like knowing that we would have that extra space, that would tell us how many cats we can house at a time. So you were talking about capacity.
Yes.
You know, it tells us how many cats that you can house in a humane way. It talks about like dog runs and kenneling and stuff like that, and how much space those animals need, and what to do with long-term stays and stuff like that. So
Yeah, it addresses even man hours needed. It's a matter of minutes per animal. That if you have this many animals in the facility, here's a formula you could figure out. Here's what my daily staffing has to be to adequately care for those animals as such. And it is very interesting. They talk about the challenges of overpopulation, and they address the hitting limits, and that it becomes inhumane when you pass those limits, the importance. It's a difficult subject for them as well. They don't really get into the direct conversations of saying, well, when you hit this number, you're going to have to probably choose some animals to euthanize. It's a very difficult conversation, and so there's areas there that are pretty gray left still.
So I guess, let's see if they want to work through that and.
Any particular one you want to start with?
We need to get this adopted.
Yeah,
first.
that
This
one
is
first.
First and foremost.
That was done.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean-
yeah, but we need a refresh.
Yeah, I need to go back and look at
And
it.
then does that mean we need to make, do the commissioners, because I could not pull up the ordinances today, is there a fee in the ordinance for adoptions that we need to have removed? Do we need them to work to change that language?
We probably do,
Okay,
yes.
which is something we probably should do
Yeah.
sooner rather than later? Okay.
I think we really need to work on owner relinquish due to the high volume of people letting go of their animals. That's been a big issue the past several months, is people wanting to get rid of their animals. So that's something that we need to address right off the bat.
Well, hit that one then.
I think the other thing too that might be beneficial is, you know, if we're going to get into the conversation about no-kill, is talking about what is the capacity of the animal shelter.
Right.
How can we, you know, how many animals can we humanely house?
Right.
And so that would be another one that the guidelines are in that handout. So we could talk about that specifically too, like what the capacity is.
And that won't be a long one to go through. And then owner,
Never know.
owner surrender and owner reclaim are kind of in the same ballpark, and I think they'll be quicker to go through.
Capacity is a set.
Yeah.
You don't calculate.
Yeah, so we can do.
All right.
And in a little more detail under the same column, we had this about the barn cat program or so forth, and it's been stopped now is my understanding, but I became aware of last month in July that we actually had both animal control officers, that they were picking up cats, and instead of bringing them to the shelter to be checked on their condition, health, or anything else, they were delivering cats directly to various local barns. And these animals were going unvetted, not any spay, neuter, so forth. And city animal control maintained very strongly that she was just strictly taking feral cats. But with county animal control, you know, I know that was not the case. I personally saw animals that county animal control had dropped off at a farm, and they were not feral cats. They were cats that had just been picked up.
We just don't have any jurisdiction over animal control though.
I understand we don't have jurisdiction, but it should be something that if the shelter personnel are aware of, that they need to bring it to attention quick. I got a hold of, brought it up here, talked to Commissioner Little. Commissioner Little said, well, it wasn't his. And so I got a hold of Sheriff Thomas and had conversations with him, and I talked with Chief Wallace. And they both decided that that absolutely was not acceptable, should not be occurring, regardless of how crowded the shelter is. So it has been stopped. But we still have the question of, we've had animals leave the shelter that have been spayed and neutered, that have went to barns.
Yeah, because if they
And,
come in and make it spayed and neutered.
You know, that's a program that if we're going to do, it needs a lot more attention put to it, because it sounds nice of this, of animals going out to a barn farm, but if you go around a lot of farms and so forth, and you see animals, cats, that have just been brought out for rodent control, they don't have a very high quality of life. They don't last, they don't stay around very long. A lot of the farmers are more worried about getting rid of the mice, so they still put out poison for the mice. The cats eat mice that have been poisoned because they're a little slower and easier to catch. They're just pretty pitiful looking animals as such. It's not this situation that you have a barn and all these nice, fat, happy cats. So there needs to be follow-up that, you know, and an agreement with the farmer that is taking these animals, that he agrees that he'll maintain such and such conditions.
There's a lot of shelters that have barn programs, so can we reach out and see what sort of stuff, what protocols they have in
Correct,
place?
but there definitely needs to
Yeah.
be protocols put into place for it. One of the farms, you know, had agreed to cats coming once and then kept getting cats and kept getting cats and had to call county animal control and say, hey, no more cats. And none of these animals had been vetted at all.
Okay, I'm happy to reach out to some shelters that have barn cat programs and finding out what their protocols are. I'm also part of a shelter group on Facebook, the Indiana Shelter Alliance, and I can just put something in there and get people's information, and I can share. I'm happy to share that with the board, and maybe we can address it in our adoption policy.
And I'd ask, you know, if our shelter director, you know, is aware of those types of things, that you bring it to attention.
I can't do anything.
No, you can bring it to attention, though.
Yeah, but I literally can't do anything about it if they're not registered through the system or they don't come in the building. Plus, I don't even know a lot of people in the area that farm, so I wouldn't even know where you're talking about.
Because when I
And
talk,
honestly, when I saw your email, that was the first I ever heard of it. Like, I
Yeah.
had not heard of it before at all. And I was like, what is he talking about?
and there was no record of where they went. And when I talked to the city animal control officer, and you know, you wonder if the cats even made it to a barn. Because when I asked, well, where did these animals go? How many of them went to such and such farm? And I was told very quickly, why would you need to know that? That's nobody's business where those animals went to. And so you have a animal control officer picking animals up and then no record of where they went to, period.
Yeah.
And you wonder, did they just get dropped off on a county road someplace?
I don't believe Janet would ever do that,
No, I really don't
ever,
believe
and I
Janet
think
would ever do that.
that's not assumed
I
she
hate to
would do
break in,
that.
but this is nothing new. This has been a rumor for quite some time. As someone who runs a cat rescue, I know very well of this, and some of mine that are missing may have been dropped. And if I found out who did it, yeah, I would be coming for them. But the problem is, this has been a rumor for quite some time, so this is nothing new.
The thing is, we don't have any jurisdiction over the
This is
animal
before she
control.
even got here.
So we have to make sure that we're going before the individuals who do have control of those situations.
Agreed.
And today, like I've heard the story of one cat being picked up that was an owned cat and the wrong cat, and the cat has not been accounted for, to my knowledge, to this day. But I have not heard this that you've brought to our attention. But I think that's a conversation that we need to make sure that animal control has a protocol for that sort of
Well,
situation.
my conversation with Janet took place in front of Lindsay. You know, she was very adamant, yes, it was taking place, maintained that it was just feral cats, though she wasn't doing any others. But very adamant, just did not want to disclose, period, where those animals had went or how many had went to what locations. And I didn't understand that, you know, why you would want to hide that as such.
I don't think she wanted to necessarily hide it. I just think sometimes, Warren, people don't want to freely give you information.
Well, that's probably because I hold them accountable.
Well, it's actually just,
You know, I understand that.
It's actually
You know,
just how
I
you
would
treat
say
people.
absolutely anytime someone is doing something they shouldn't do, I am sure they don't like me to know about it. Because I won't leave it lay.
You
I won't
also
turn a blind eye to it.
speak poorly to individuals.
What's
and
that?
You also speak poorly to individuals, so.
You
We're
know,
gonna move on
Hannah,
from
this
this.
is, if you want to discuss how I deal with places, this is not the time or the
Yeah.
place to do
We're
it.
gonna move on,
as
I just
such.
said.
What's that?
I just said we're gonna move on from this.
Well, number one, you're not running the meeting, Ray runs the meeting.
Go ahead,
So
Ray.
if Ray wants to move on,
He has
that's
asked that
fine.
we move
And
on.
I'm glad to move on from that topic as well.
Glad to share your
Any
thoughts.
other new
I
business?
probably wouldn't share information with you
You
either.
get all my feral cats that I track and release, so
Yeah.
there we go.
Because I have
I'm happy to share
offered
your
many
emails.
times to
Yeah.
help take care of feral cats that come in through the
Yeah,
shelter.
and you get some doozies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, they can't be adopted as regular pets, but you also want to offer them the opportunity for a life.
Right.
Like, we don't want to just euthanize them, right? And so I am happy to spay neuter and rabies vaccinate feral animals so that they have the opportunity for life.
Any other new business?
We have reinstating the prison work program.
I did call today.
Okay.
Yeah, and I really would too. I would like to know the circumstances behind it though. Like I know we'll have to go through some type like sort of training. I know that, but I don't know if we will be responsible for going and picking them up or if they're now able to bring them to us with a guard. That makes a huge difference in the safety of the young girls that work for me. Those are somebody's children. I would not want my nieces and nephews to go pick up.
Yeah.
You know,
A
I'm
bunch
not
of them.
saying they're bad people, like, I'm just not, but every once in a while it can get a little scary, and, so I'm open to hear any kind of training or anything we need to do to get them back into the building, because I'm all for it too.
Yeah, and I think it would
Yeah.
be great because there's a lot that they can do. I just am worried about us becoming so reliant on them in case we have a situation where, like we did with COVID, where they got pooled. So I don't want to decrease our staffing and become reliant on them, but there's still
Right.
so much they could be doing to
Right.
help the shelter.
And I was told right out the, yeah, and I was told right out the gate that there was like a low population of guards to prisoners at first, and I think that was due to COVID, but I also called while COVID was still rampant. So we'll see what she has for us this time. Okay, so I'm sorry. Yeah.
I used to be a shelter employee,
Yeah.
and I did pick up the ladies from the prison.
Okay. There we go.
It is, I would definitely not put young women
Right.
in that position.
Right, they're all
I-
mid-20s and below.
Yes,
So,
and I was never comfortable with that.
right,
So I would not do that.
right.
They should have a guard.
Yeah, and that's what I feel most comfortable with too.
Yes.
Because I'm not always going to be able to be in the building. I've got
And you
things to do.
cannot, you can't watch them
Right.
constantly when you have 3 to 5 women
Right.
and they're cleaning cages, walking dogs.
Right.
But if there was someone that could watch over them, that would be different.
Yeah,
But
right.
I would not do that for young women.
Yeah, I don't plan on going that route if that's still the case.
If we could get a sheriff or reserve program going, that could be an option. Have them come and transport and
I know when they do it,
And
is it
hang
the
out
same
with
group
them
the
while
city
they're
uses,
working.
right?
It's what?
The same group that the city
You
uses.
normally, well, it's the same individuals
Yeah.
normally. They
And
have
they
certain
have a guard.
individuals that they have.
yeah, but they never took them up to the shelter.
I know,
guards.
but I'm saying like when we have them working for the city, they have a guard that supervises them the entire time.
That's not how it was at the shelter.
It was not.
I believe the shelter director and maybe another staff member, there was some type of course or training you had to take at the women's prison, and you were considered to be their supervisor as such.
Okay.
Is that somewhat
That-
correct?
Okay,
Yes, that is true.
That's fine, but they're too short-handed and they're a young group up there. There's no way that
Right.
I
you
understand.
can expect them to do that.
Well, and you can't expect them to work for a low wage when the prison guards are getting a higher wage. So
Exactly.
they definitely need to be paid more money if
Yeah.
they have to do that, but I don't know how exactly to say this, you just can't watch them all. And it's too much responsibility for one person working in the shelter with all of those women at one time.
Not only that, you do have drugs, you will have
Exactly.
drugs there. So they have to be under lock and key and someone has to,
Yeah.
you should have a key code to even get in there.
That's
Into the
what I
background.
had the
That's-
idea,
that's-
if we get a sheriff's reserve program going again, that might be an option to have a reserve officer be with them the whole time, go through the courses.
Can you just email the board when you hear back and let us know?
Yeah, I don't know how long she's out of the office. She was out of the office yesterday, today, so maybe she'll be back.
Okay, just let us know. Let us know what you hear.
Anything else from the audience?
Wait, we got a couple more. I added website because I forgot to put that on. Sarah has been working on updating the county page to make it where the animal shelter actually has a full
Right.
website looking page, so it's gonna have some information about our adoption procedures. And we're not gonna highlight like owner relinquish just to not advertise it.
Right.
But we're gonna have the pictures of the animals on there, and then it'll link them to the adoptable animals, so she's working on that. it's gonna look a lot nicer.
It's gonna have our dog day out application,
Yeah.
our foster application, a copy of our
And
adoption
that's
application.
then all streamlined through the county website, so and it goes directly to Lindsay's inbox. So
Yeah.
Lindsay and I sat down with her and worked through that.
Well, we tried.
We tried.
It
No,
was
there's
really
more.
busy.
We
It
owe
was
her
really
some
busy that
edits,
day, yeah.
so I need to get her some edits.
Hmm.
But she is working on that. And then last thing on new business is a Happy Tales. I figured we can end our meeting on a Happy Tale. So I'm not sure how many of you guys know what a Happy Tale is, but it's a happy story of a dog or a cat being adopted. And I wanted to share Toto's story. So Toto was one of our long-term residents at the animal shelter. How long was he there for, Lindsay?
4 to 5 months.
He was a black boxer, probably pitty mix, and very incredibly hyper. Needed to learn some manners, and he was what was deemed more hard to adopt. No issues with him, other than just he had a lot of energy, a lot of that boxer energy. He went to one of our adoption events at PetSense and ended up sitting in the little boy's lap, and they ended up taking him home. And she sends us videos and pictures of him constantly. And so I just wanted to share his story because he was given a chance. He's one of our longer term residents, and he now is a Happy Tale that we can share.
Yes, and Tater Tot too. Tater Tot was
Tater
deemed
Tot, oh my
aggressive
gosh.
to other dogs.
Yeah.
And now he wears a life jacket.
don't forget
He's like
Leo.
a shark.
There's so many Happy
Yeah.
Tales.
Don't forget Leo.
I can share
Now
one.
he's
Don't
got
forget
7
Leo.
siblings
Leo was-
that under 7 years old.
Yeah.
Leo was a very reactive dog when
Yes,
he was
absolutely.
kenneled, but when he was out of the kennel,
Best dog ever.
best dog ever, and he was matched with someone, and it turned out to be a really good. Not only that, and
We're at public comment, go
Are we
ahead.
at that part, public comment now? I've been working with a lot of the dogs, and I used to train dogs. It was my profession a long time ago. I'm not running across any dogs that have kennel rage, anything like that. We have a couple dogs. When they're let out of their kennels, they have completely different attitudes than when they're in their kennels. Have they made me nervous a couple times? Yeah, but I see them come out. I've seen large dogs go and sit in Lindsay's lap and hug her. There's a video if y'all want to check it out now with me going through. I've been working with all the dogs training. Everybody's sitting. They know their sits. So they're getting out more. We're getting more the dog day out.
Oh my.
We have one
The
lady
dog
in my
day out.
neighborhood that's
That's
been
the
there.
best thing.
3 out of 3 have been adopted so far that she's taken out. So
That has been the best program for those
it's
dogs.
been wonderful, and it's
Yes.
giving everybody the opportunity. We have people come at lunchtime just to walk a dog, Albert especially. We have one young lady that works at Lowe's, and she takes Wilbur over there a couple times a week. So the dogs are getting out, they're getting out into the big pens, their whole attitude's starting to change. So it's been really a good experience that way. So they're all getting socialized. The Dog Day Out is a great program.
Yes.
We have people that can't have dogs because of the limited amount of rental, I guess, where people can't have dogs, but they can have cats. I have people coming in and they're taking dogs out because they're not allowed to have dogs. So they go out and take them out, take them downtown, take them for a walk, take them to the dog park. So the dogs are out and they're starting to get more socialized, which is really nice to see. Oh yeah, there is a grandma lady that comes and sits with a cat a couple times a week.
She gets her
I
fix
think,
with the
I don't know,
cats.
it's all,
One of my favorite
first
things,
we
yeah.
thought she was gonna adopt a cat, but now I think she likes to come and socialize and sit and hold cats, which is just as good.
Yes, I will take everybody's grandmother.
Yes.
Several cats, that would make me happy.
Our
Send them all my way.
recyclables, the gentleman that's,
Yes.
That Dog Day Out is awesome.
it is, the recyclables, the gentleman that runs the recycling center, he's actually stepped up and started coming and picking the recyclables up. He lives right around the corner from the shelter. So he comes, and not only that, he has also said that he will bring his flatbed so that we can remove the old washers and dryers out of the pole barn and anything else that we would like to get rid of. Speaking of which, we also had a washer that gave up the ghost a week and a half ago, and we had someone from the community donate a new washer for us. So we now have 2 washers, and the leak has been fixed. So that's also been fixed. What else? I have a question about, you do need one more full-time employee. In my
Absolutely.
opinion,
Yes.
what I've done, and assess the whole situation. If you want DOC girls to come in, my suggestion would be have them come in and do laundry, because I've been doing 6 to 8 loads of laundry a day. It'll keep them busy, it'll keep them off the street, that I can tell you, and they'll sleep really well at night too. The covers on the dog kennels are starting to rot already. The material that you have is rotting, and we were suggesting doing some kind of a metal cover over top of them, and that way they can be left out longer because of the way the sun is hitting it. You can use something that you would use, like the horse stalls that they do, the metal covers. It's simple, it's easy, and it shouldn't be that costly.
Yeah.
Well, Adam's been going through and cleaning things out. Apparently there was a hoarding situation at the animal shelter. There's a lot of...
There's more buckets than you know what to do with.
There
So
was a
buckets
lot-
have been going.
And we have to change our ask for what we need donated to the shelter. We have enough Dawn to do the dishes in Madison for a year. There's a lot of Dawn up there. I mean, seriously.
Every home in Madison.
Every home,
Yes.
not just one. Yeah, that, we're up, we have enough hand sanitizer, that kind of stuff. The cat litter we need, the canned
Pine-Sol,
cat food,
the canned cat food.
paper towels is huge.
Pine-Sol.
Black plastic bags, that kind of stuff. But we need to start rotating things out. We've gone through all the dog food and pulled anything that's ready to expire. We're moving it on, we're gonna donate it when it's to that point. It needs to be donated to Salvation Army or something like that. We can't keep just taking things all the time. Some things are gonna have to move on. We have enough towels right now. Lady donated towels, they're nicer than the ones at my house, so I kept them there at the shelter and got rid of old stuff that has holes in it. That kind of stuff, it needs to be rotated out. It wasn't getting done, and it had nothing to do with the people that are there now.
Right.
We've seen things in there, I have found things in there that just horrify me. Nobody knows what they're for, why there's a hook hanging, why there's curtains in the back that have rips in them hanging from metal poles. I have
It's
no
all
idea
gone.
why. It's gone. Nobody knows what it's for, it hasn't been used. The chains hanging from the kennels have been removed. I missed one, and we had a dog that caught himself up. They're all being removed. And the only answer I have about the chains, and they're hung. They're clipped here, they're down like this, and they're
Even
hung.
with the new kennels.
No.
I won't mention the
And
name.
let me tell you, it has nothing to do with the people that you have in there now.
Yeah.
It was your
previous.
last volunteer,
That double hung
that double
chains.
that double hung chains, and she used them because it was more convenient for her so that dogs wouldn't escape. So the perimeter fence is huge. But I know you had dogs that hurt themselves with chains, but the chains were still there. And nobody, not the Humane Society, nobody went in there and dealt with that. You still have barbed wire out there. So it's not, you can't just blame the shelter people, it's everybody. If you're going to go in and police a situation, really look at the whole situation. You don't hang chains in dog kennels. You don't do
That
that.
was not.
I wasn't even aware.
I mean,
there
we saw the
were
dog
changes.
today.
If you
It
aren't
was quick.
aware, then you're not paying
We were able
attention.
to
If you're
get
not
the chain.
aware, then you're not paying attention to the right things. That's where you walk and you start looking at that kind of stuff and looking ahead and seeing how a dog can get in trouble. It's just like reading a dog and its personality and what it's going to do to another dog.
Right, that was the start of public comment.
Yeah, we're on public comment.
That was, yeah, that was the start of getting the new kennels outside.
Exactly.
I went up there for, just to walk around and
Right.
saw that all the dogs were being hooked to collars and
Oh,
to
yeah.
small
And I was
chains, and I was like,
horrified
this is
when
not
I
okay.
Yeah.
missed one
Right.
and
Yeah.
saw him get his neck caught up today. And I was just beside myself.
Yeah.
But it's just the whole look of the shelter that's changing. And I understand, I don't know when the new building's coming. My understanding is people have stopped the shelter from being built, the new one. I don't get involved in that stuff. I'm just saying, your pig right now has lipstick on it and it's getting better. It's looking a lot
We're
better.
gonna make it look the best it
And
can.
we're doing the best
deal
we
with
can.
what we
It's
can.
been sanitized. Your laundry's getting done every day. you
And
know.
we truly do appreciate everything
Yeah.
that
It's
the
not
two
that,
of you
it's
have
a
done.
team
everybody.
effort.
Yeah.
It's everybody,
You know?
everybody's working well together right now. Why are you smirking?
It really takes extra pairs of hands.
Yeah.
What is this
Because
smirking
there's,
about?
you know,
Okay.
we
I
were
don't
busy, we're
understand.
busy, we would
It's okay.
start something, we wouldn't be able to finish it, it would set for a week, more things would accumulate. We really just needed an extra set
Yeah.
of helping hands that didn't expect
That's
anything in
all,
return.
and we have had
Yeah.
such an outpouring from the community because it's positive.
Correct.
There's a
We
lot
have
of
people-
positive and
we've
everybody's
had-
coming to help.
We've had the Restore offer to partner with us, TCC Verizon, I believe, they've offered. We've had a couple different nonprofits coming in.
Yeah.
So it's going in a positive way, and that's the way we want it to continue. So negative, there's no point in it anymore.
I agree with that.
I will say, you know, all the food that I went through, nothing was expired bad.
No.
It just needed to be moved up so that we could use it right away.
Yeah.
Okay? So anything else that was like questionable, I threw in the trash, but it wasn't food. You know?
I do know the Humane Society has a rescue that they fully fund, apparently. And my suggestion would be, why don't you pull cats from the shelter and put them into a place for Benny? Or someplace else like that where they could be taken care of. If we're
He was here
overpopulated.
this evening.
I know.
Yeah, he was here this evening, and I.
Oh, was that
checked
the
with him.
gentleman?
Yeah, that was
Oh,
Shane.
well,
I check with him
I
regularly.
didn't know, I thought his name was Benny.
Yeah, I check with him regularly, he doesn't have any
Yeah,
places right now.
I think he's like, he's
Yeah.
incredibly
super
full.
Well,
in
maybe
his
there are
house.
other,
Yeah.
maybe there are other cat rescues
There are.
that the Humane Society can pull cats out of the shelter that they're concerned about.
We're
And
keeping
go,
cats out of the
I'm
shelter.
sorry,
Yeah, we're
I'm
working to
talking.
keep cats out of the shelter.
can I finish, please?
Why, sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Maybe they can pull, if you're, you know, that's where the population is, right there are the cats. If we can if you guys can pull the cats out and put them into rescues, that would help the shelter immensely. It's time consuming. So time consuming that we couldn't figure out why the big bag of cans were in the kitchen every day. I'm like, why are there cat cans in here? The old regime, I'll call it, they used to have every cat can food rinsed and the labels taken off.
Yes.
Do you know how many cat cans?
Okay, but do you
you
realize how much
understand what
money you're
you're
really gonna
paying?
make off of that little bit of cans compared to what you're paying an employee?
The time.
We're not doing that anymore.
I made an executive decision.
They go to the
We're
trash.
not doing it anymore.
You're not making any money from it, you're losing
I'm
money
pretty
by
sure you
doing
can
it.
still put them in the bin and we stop them and take them.
They can go,
Yeah.
they do,
Yeah.
but I just said, you're not making enough money off these cans to take your employees away
To wash.
from doing dogs and cleaning cats and that stuff. It's an old way of doing business. And like they say, and what most everybody up there has said is, well, that's the way it's always been done.
We work
It needs
smarter,
to
not harder.
change. And that's what we're working with everybody. We have people coming in, we have a volunteer, Eric, who comes in.
We love Eric.
Eric comes
We all love
in for a
Eric.
couple hours, 3 or 4 times a week and does dishes. And it takes a huge load off of the people that are working with the animals.
He's great.
Yes.
That's
He's great,
what-
he's a great guy.
That's the kind of, he's the kind of people we need, you know? I mean,
He offers to help
we're
do
moving
everything.
in a
He'll do
positive
anything you ask
direction.
him to do.
There's no reason for the negative anymore. It's moving in a positive. I understand everybody wants a new building, I get that, but until then,
Yeah, we work with what we
Let's
got and
make
make it the best that we can.
let's have people work with the dogs. Let's have these programs. And you need more procedures, I'll give you that. You actually need a procedure that someone says, when you come in the morning, this is the first thing you do.
Right.
And then you do it this. I don't think at this time, what I've seen, there's enough management that way. That would be my only, when you have new employees, there needs to be someone that's directing it and telling them. But if you don't have a procedure, you can hand a procedure to someone and go, you come in, you clock in, you start by taking the dogs out, and then you feed them, and you do that. We have to work on procedures, in my opinion. So, other than that,
Where are
Okay.
we on
I
access
have-
to the pet point program? I meant to ask earlier.
Well, that would determine if everybody would want access to the Pet Point program.
I think, was it Sue or who was it that said
I
limited?
can't remember who
Someone
emailed
said
that,
limited,
yeah.
because I think we do need to make sure we're not accidentally deleting things and messing up the system. Is that an option? Did you find that out?
It would have to be deemed view only.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, PetPoint is slow. PetPoint acts, what do you call it, their customer service. They're slow with me, so I can imagine setting up 6 or 7 new people might take a minute. But I think it is doable. I think it is, but we would have to do it on a read-only basis. But I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
But it is gonna take a while because it'll take me upwards of 2 weeks to get a response back to like delete a rescue out of the system. It would be nice, I know that they did this in the past at one point, that they would send technicians out for training. That was pre-COVID. I don't know if they do that now, but that would be the easiest way to do that, is to set everybody down and show. But I mean, why not?
At some point, you may want to take a look at if PetPoint is where you want to stay on all of that.
Right.
I mean, because PetPoint, they offer it, it's a free program as such, but it also, it's gathering information all the time on your customer base.
Right.
And they're wanting you to buy a certain amount of chips through them. They're selling an insurance product for the animal through them. And all of the information you put in goes to them. And they say they don't sell it to outside sources, but they sell it to companies that are affiliated with PetPoint as such. So, you know, I don't know how that works for certain.
This is just the
It was there when you came in.
And it's in Switzerland County too.
It
I
had
mean,
only
it's-
been partially used in the past.
Right.
I think Holly had started using it in the last 6
She's
months
the one that started
of 2021.
consistently, yeah.
Before that, Jenny hadn't used it much, but it ties in on the chips. The chips come through PetPoint as well.
Yes, but there is also a drop-down menu of 4 or 5 different companies that
Right.
you can register on
Right.
PetPoint.
Anything else from the public?
Yeah. Just on the dog runs, you know, in California, in one area of our yard, we had decomposed granite that was packed. It's good for the dogs to run on, and it's easy to clean. It's easy to sanitize, and it stays packed because you can put a packing agent in that, and then when they compress it, it's really good for the dogs. We used it all the time. It was wonderful. Easy to clean up, easy to sanitize. That was just one thing to add to it. The dog adoptions, if we could start a sponsor dog where we could get sponsors to donate for half of the adoption fee, you know, for certain people, you know, and then we would still be getting the full adoption fee, you know.
We've had people come forward and sponsor
Yes.
adoption fees before.
Yeah, and then Bobby, we'll talk about the cat room work because they had a couple other ideas. But I did want to say, I have put in probably almost 200 hours up there already volunteer. I love it. It's kept me busy being retired. When I'm done every day, I look and I'm like, this is awesome. It looks great. Lindsay's got a great team she's putting together. She runs the volunteers great. We all work great with her. Her employees work great with her. I mean, you've got volunteers all the way in here. Paula, oh my God, Paula. You do wonderful pictures and videos.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you haven't
We're
seen
all
today's video.
doing she had a chore today. But, you know, we're having fun going up there and helping take care of what we need to take care of to support the shelter. You know, Lindsay's wonderful to work with. I mean, honestly, she's been a great asset.
And she's calm
She stays calm. She keeps her staff
in
calm.
a tornado.
Yeah.
And you know what? It only gets better. It's getting better every day. Yes, she needs some more people.
Yes.
You know, it's not her fault. She's working with what she's got. And I tell you, the volunteers at least are helping her make up the difference right now until she can.
Right.
You know, but at least she's going to have a building, hopefully by the time we're all done, that is what she should have walked into to begin with when she started her job. You know what I mean?
Right.
Thank all of you volunteers very much.
Yes.
And
we
that's
love
what we're all
volunteers.
trying to do is make it fair.
And it's really unfortunate that the time spent shut down with COVID was not spent doing
Cleaning.
this.
You know, that was the other gripe that I had. You know, you closed down for COVID, there was no excuse for that building not to be spotless. I mean, the staff was there.
It was
They're there
filthy.
all day. Why didn't they clean it and organize instead of just let it go? You know, dog adoptions. I don't want to hear, well, it was COVID, nobody was adopting dogs. Everybody was adopting dogs during COVID,
Yep.
just so you know.
Oh, yeah.
California, all over the place, people were adopting dogs because they were home. So, you know what? You want to put apples to apples from this month to last year at this month? It shouldn't be,
It's completely changed.
yeah, you should not be able to say, whoa, it was COVID. No, that's a load.
And I'd like to invite you all to come up,
Yeah.
who haven't been up to the shelter. to
Everybody
take
should
a
come
look.
up and look
You really
It
should
is-
take
it
a
is
look.
of
really
the progress
easy
that's
to
been going on
assume,
with
isn't it?
everybody.
I
It
think the
is-
Community Foundation was quite surprised when we invited them in to
Yeah.
walk through and not just do the check outside. They all came through and did a tour of the
We invited them inside,
facility.
and they were quite impressed.
Yeah.
They were very happy with the staff and the changes that are going on, the happy employees.
Yeah, it's really easy to assume how something is ran when you don't really want the person to succeed that's running it. But you really just have to see it. I mean, it's not bad. It's not bad. We are doing okay.
And we're still working on it.
We have some really smart girls in there right now.
Yes.
That we are
Absolutely.
so fortunate that I don't know how we ended up getting, but we got them and I'd like to keep them.
Jessica's like your,
Yeah, I know.
oh my, I
Yeah.
can't say enough about Jessica.
Yeah, she's a doll baby. We've got those girls that just came in with the vet tech experience, and they're smart as
Yes.
heck. They're gonna be a
Wonderful.
huge asset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're great.
So we're really pleased with the way things are going. It's just one of those things you have to see firsthand. I really appreciate you guys coming up and genuinely spending the time to watch me do everything, watch how I do everything, watch how we interact.
It's an eye-opener.
Because it's a lot different than when
Well,
when
you
people
deal with
say-
the public great. You and Jessica
Yes.
both deal with
Well,
the
that's
public very
animal
well.
control. You have to learn how to deal with combative situations in a job like that, and it kind of prepared me. We've had some really bad
You know
situations.
what,
up
and even
there.
Janet and Paul come in and help.
They really do.
And they're great too.
Yeah.
I will give it, they're there.
Yeah, Janet is there every time I ever
Yeah.
ask her for anything.
Ray, could I comment on a couple of things before we close the meeting?
Yes.
I just wanted to say, because it's a public meeting, a special thank you to the Department of Corrections for the things that they have done for the city and the animal shelter in the past, as well as for the county and a lot of other places during the flood programs. I realize that, I'll just flat out say, the city and the DOC have worked very closely together on many, many projects, and it was my personal experience in working with the DOC ladies. They did an exceptional job during the flood program. We have a facility where there's obviously a lot of alcohol, and it worked very well, very, very well. I think Ray's right. There's opportunity for supervision that doesn't necessarily have to come through the shelter staff, and that would perhaps be helpful under certain circumstances. And then I also wanted to remind everyone and ask that the advisory board look again at your budget. There was some discussion about cats being dropped in the county and some sidestepping back going, well, we don't have any control over that, but there are laws, actual laws that say you can't dump animals. And if our animal control officers are breaking those laws, it's fairly serious. And our shelter board and our shelter director and our county commissioner and county council members want to take a hard look at that. But if you're really seriously considering a program like a trap, spay, neuter, release, that probably needs to be a line item on your budget, and it's just not there. And so I would, you know, if you're leaning that direction, if you're hoping to have it, now is the time. There's not been a request made of the city. You actually have a city animal control officer dumping animals into the county, which is not a good thing. And so the city might be more willing to step up, give some support to Hannah when
City is
requesting.
in support of a trap neuter release program, and Patrick Thibodeau reached out to me about looking into getting one implemented.
And so the money, that would be great to have some support for that, financial support.
Would that
So
not
that
go
there's,
into the standards or something like that?
no, there would be other things involved in it.
So there's some grants that we can qualify for a trap neuter release program. And there's a program through Alley Cat Advocates, and it is like, I think it's $30 a cat, and we can say we want to do this many this year, and then dedicate so many in a month and bring them down there if we wanted to.
But you're still talking about travel expenses.
Yeah, I think it would have to be a different line item.
Right, it would need to be so. And then,
Because it also covers their vet.
I did
their
get
fee covers their vet
a couple of phone
like
calls.
School, everything. I took one down there. Sorry, I
That's
was talking
okay.
about their trap litter release
No,
program.
we're
but
working with
the
the
mayor's very in support of that.
Right, good. So hopefully there'll be some funding there. And there's also a program over in Cincinnati that we've got someone working with right now with some cats over in Hanover. I did get a couple phone calls from volunteers asking, why hasn't my application been reviewed? I said, I will mention that. So if you could check your application folder on your volunteers, there's been a couple of them that probably have been missed.
Okay.
And then one suggestion for additional funding, your dog walking program is a perfect fit for KDH's Healthy Community Initiative in terms of getting people at, there you go, Hannah, write her down. Because that is something that community or that KDH Foundation would be willing to help fund. You've got some businesses on the hilltop that might be willing to partner with walking dogs at lunch or walking dogs after work. Getting some of that, getting some funding for that through Norton's KDH would be, I think, a fairly strong possibility. If you need some help in that area, let me know. Because I think really reducing that kennel rage and helping them get adopted with some training and things like that.
I don't think there is kennel rage.
There is zero kennel
From what
rage.
I've seen, so.
That's great that everybody thinks there's not. And I'm not going to debate with anybody preventing
We're there with the dogs
that.
every day. There's no kennel rage, I'm
If you will
telling
let
you.
me finish.
Oh, sure.
Kennel rage is prevented by walking and socializing, and that's a helpful thing to have. Do that walking program to prevent it. Kennel rage is a real problem. I'm not saying it's a current problem at the shelter. It was in the past. Some of that had to do with COVID. A lot of it has to do with animals being left in the kennels unattended for a long time. We have a good set of volunteers at this point and some walking going on. So develop your program, try to find some funding for it, and keep preventing it and getting the good results. And the changes at the shelter with painting and remodeling and cleaning and organization have long been overdue, and that's a great thing to have happened there. If you have extra food, Lindsay, one of the things that we found that really helps with adoption is doing some incentives, like get a free thing of dog food or a free thing of cat food or whatever. This week, adopt them and get some free food.
I usually donate it to.
Yeah.
We have bags.
You
that
might
we
want to
give
go
out
ahead
for
and put that
adoptions.
on your social media so that that gets out there, because that's really helpful.
Yeah, I
Are you
usually
the social
donate it to the
media
whole-
lady?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
That would be Kelly behind you. who's
Okay,
really
yeah,
in our
that
box
would
for
be
helping
great.
us.
Okay. And the other thing that I've noticed is that if there's any way that you can encourage, I monitor the shelter Facebook page, and I see who's sharing, and I also see who's not sharing. So if there's any way that you can encourage shelter board members, commissioners, city employees, anybody to help spread this cat, this dog available for adoption,
We do that all the
that
time,
really is helpful.
constantly.
You guys do a great job with
Well,
that.
some
I'm just
people don't,
suggesting
yeah.
as many people as you can get to
A lot
share.
of people don't have as
I don't
much
blame
time
you.
as the rest of us.
If you look at the stuff that gets posted, the amount of shares that get hit on it, it's getting out there.
Yeah, you guys can see the insights from
Yeah.
the friends of
Oh, yeah.
the Madison County Animal Shelter.
We don't post anything.
Any other public comments? Yeah, Heather's a great one. I wrote it down.
Like reading.
You should be able to get some really great funding through there for any of that stuff.
Okay, next meeting will be September 7th.
I've got a public question here.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah, how long has the barn cat program been running?
There actually hasn't been a barn cat program.
There was not a barn- okay.
There's not actually been a barn cat program.
We'd like to get one started.
Okay, thank you.
So if I can get someone in place from an outside organization, a national organization, to come talk about best practices, do you want me to set that up for next meeting? Okay, I gave her dates for September and October. I haven't gotten back to her on what day she's available. But, okay. that would be a good kind of start to go for our standard operating procedures, stuff like that.
They're talking about no-kill also.
That would be at a different time, yeah, she said that, she uses a different, she recommended a different group for that. Best Friends Animal Society, she gave me the name of the person to contact for them. And that's more like along the lines of no-kill, but they'll talk about like the Humane Society of the United States, what their best practices are for sheltering.
All right. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor? Good meeting, everybody.